Hello, my name is Pat Parungal, and this is my migration story. It starts with great-grandfather Jun Singh, who arrived in 1882 to Canada, and he worked various physically demanding jobs such as construction of the Canadian Pacific Railway and logging in the Shaughnessy area. The next picture is my grandfather, who joined his dad in 1911. However, he was held at the prison-like quarantine immigration facilities for 12 days, then had to pay $500 head tax before being released to be able to join his dad to work at the Hastings sawmill. My paternal grandmother, Leong Sui Chi, was very young when she was given or sold to an uncle, around 5 years old. She came to British Columbia and worked for the Sam family of Powell River until she was 18, at which time she was married through an arranged marriage, and my grandfather at that time was 28 years old. They moved to Lulu Island and started farming. Although Grandma didn't have any formal education, she was very skillful at tending the crops and the livestock, cooking for the family. They had 10 children, cooking for the farm hands, sewing, crocheting, knitting, and craft work. My maternal grandparents, Toy and Choi King, came to Victoria in 1915. My grandmother was the daughter of a jeweler, and she brought with her her dowry, jewelry dowry. My grandfather was a university professor, and he brought some money. However, he loaned it to friends, and the money was later lost because he was unable to collect on those loans. They also brought 2 servant girls. However, when it was learned that Canada did not allow people to have servants, the girls left. They lived in Victoria, BC, and they had 10 children. They were quite poor. So grandfather became a cook on the boats that went up and down the BC coast and was often away from home. They all struggled. My mom struggled. She didn't even finish grade 10. However, she did later land a job with Canadian Pacific Airlines as a stewardess. She flew the Vancouver, Hong Kong, Tokyo route, and it was a job that she absolutely loved. I was born in the Langley Memorial Hospital and was the first baby of Chinese ancestry to be born there. All the nurses wanted to come to take a look at this baby with a head full of black hair and this mysterious spot on the bottom that was my Mongolian spot. They had never heard or seen this before, and they were certain that somebody had dropped me. While growing up, I spoke a combination of my mom's Sunhui dialect and my paternal Yinping dialect. Chinese was my first language. However, starting in grade 1, I refused to speak Chinese, even though I was threatened with spankings for not speaking Chinese. Now, even though we were one of the very few Chinese families in Surrey, I still grew up with an understanding of what it meant to be Chinese. My mom learned cooking from her mom. Even though my maternal grandmother had bound feet and had servants, she still learned how to cook. She knew how to read and write, which was unusual for girls back at that time. And she sewed shoes for herself. She made shoes for herself for her bound feet and embroidered them. That was quite a common thing for women who had bound feet to do. When she came to Canada, of course, she had to unbind her feet. Mom, Grandma Yuan, and I went to Hong Kong when I was 16 years old. The main purpose of this trip was to find authentic decor for a restaurant that my mom and dad were building. Dad was back home building this restaurant. He was a carpenter, and he actually built furniture, other houses, and at least one other commercial building. In November 2017, I was fortunate to go on the Chinese Canadian Historical Society of BC Cantonese migration tour to Guangdong. For the first time, I went to the ancestral village and met paternal relatives who welcomed me into their home. We gave reverence to our ancestors by bowing, by burning incense, by burning spirit money, and making offerings of food and drink. I had seen this kind of ceremony at my grandmother's house in Vancouver before. Afterwards, we walked to a nearby field, which was our family home, was the family home of my ancestors when they lived in China. We then went to Mouse Village, my paternal grandmother's village, and it was very fortunate that my cousin's cousin came with us, because she translated from the local Yinping dialect to Daisy, who was my student researcher. She was a student of English at the Wuyi University, and she took the Cantonese and translated it into English for me so I could understand what was being said. We met some elders, some seniors, however, nobody could recall my paternal grandmother. I haven't been to my maternal village of Sanwei, but I have seen some images of it online as kind of a virtual migration to that part of China. The continuation of my migration story includes my husband, Bert Perungao, who immigrated to Canada from the Philippines in 1981. It also includes our sons, Robert and Paul, as they migrate throughout the world. Indeed, through them, all of my ancestors continue to migrate. If you enjoy migration and family stories, please consider taking a look at the Pacific Canada Heritage Centre Museum of Migration social media and listening to or reading other stories, and please consider contributing your own stories as well. Thank you for watching.